The first sight of land does not end a crossing, it transforms it. By full morning light, the faint western shadow had gathered form enough that no disciplined eye could mistake it for cloud. The horizon no longer described a perfect arc. Instead, it bore interruption. Low ridges rising and falling in uneven contour, softened by distance but undeniable in structure. What had been abstraction became geography. The crew did not cheer. They watched. Men who had spent more than 70 days within uninterrupted horizon now confronted variation, and the effect was almost solemn. One does not greet land as spectacle after such duration. One regards it with gravity. The sun climbed steadily, sharpening relief and as diminishing haze. Greens emerged faintly through the morning light. Not vivid, not distinct, but present. The coastline revealed layered shapes, a nearer ridge low and dark, a higher formation beyond, and between them a lighter seam that might have been beach or simply shifting reflection. I did not allow attention to linger on beauty. "Maintain heading," I instructed the helmsman. He nodded, hands steady upon the wheel. The sea beneath us altered perceptibly as distance closed. The swell that had carried us for weeks in broad, uninterrupted lines now encountered resistance. Waves refracted subtly, their crests bending slightly before reaching the hull. Beneath the surface, unseen contours redirected motion upward in compressed intervals. This is the ocean's first warning. Approach is more complex than crossing. The captain joined me at the rail, his gaze scanning both coastline and water between. "Depth?" he asked. "Uncertain," I replied. "Color suggests rising floor." Indeed, the water had shifted from deep cobalt to layered turquoise nearer the horizon. Lighter bands interrupted darker channels. The transition did not occur abruptly. It unfolded in gradients that required patient observation. I ordered the lead prepared. A sailor moved forward with weighted line, coiled and ready. The crew understood the implication, without explanation. Open ocean had required calculation. Coastal water required measurement. The first sounding was taken at cautious distance. The line descended. The call returned with number sufficient for comfort, though shallower than any depth recorded in recent weeks. "Hold steady," I said. The vessel advanced. Birds multiplied overhead, not in scattered twos and threes, but in sustained presence. Their cries layered the air with sharp insistence. Some wheeled directly above us before veering inland. Others skimmed low across the bow, riding invisible currents with casual mastery. The scent of land intensified, unmistakable now. Warm vegetation, faint earth, something alive beyond salt. The crew inhaled deeply without comment. It is a rare thing to smell soil after 70 days of brine. As the sun reached mid-morning height, the coastline resolved further. I could now distinguish irregularities, what appeared to be breaks in ridge, perhaps inlets or river mouths. Darker vertical lines suggested trees rising above undergrowth. A pale stretch at the base of one slope reflected sunlight in a manner consistent with sand. Yet beauty must not distract from hazard. The water ahead displayed alternating bands of colour, deeper channels cutting through lighter shelves, swell patterns bent and recombined unpredictably. The vessel's motion grew less uniform. Instead of broad ascents and descents, she encountered subtle shifts in resistance, as though invisible hands pressed against her keel from varying directions. "Sound again?" I ordered. The lead descended. The call returned lower than previous measure. The captain's jaw tightened slightly. "We adjust?" he asked. "Not yet." To alter course prematurely would invite greater complication. Instead, I observed the swell's break pattern carefully. Where waves rose more sharply and folded sooner, depth diminished. Where they travelled long and smooth, channel likely continued. We edged slightly starboard, correcting by degrees small enough to avoid dramatic shift, yet sufficient to test deeper water. The next sounding increased. Good. The helmsman held steady, though I sensed a tension in his posture, unfamiliar from open sea. Coastal navigation carries different weight. Error is no longer abstract. The crew grew quieter. Land, now unmistakable, rose in textured layers ahead. Sunlight struck slopes in uneven patches. A faint line of surf shimmered at the base of one distant reef, its white arc visible only when crest caught light. I marked its bearing immediately. Reefs announce themselves with broken water. We were not yet near it, but approach compresses distance quickly. By midday, heat intensified further. The air lay heavy across deck. The water's turquoise bands brightened under direct sun, revealing intricate variations that open ocean never displays. Shadows beneath the surface suggested ridges, though depth remained adequate. "Ease sail slightly," I instructed. "Speed must yield to caution." Canvas adjusted. The vessel's forward motion diminished modestly. Wake narrowed. Another sounding. Lower again. 2 points starboard, I said calmly. The helmsman complied, turning the wheel with measured precision. For a brief moment the hull vibrated differently. Not impact, not contact, but altered resistance. I felt it through the rail before hearing any sound. The captain's head turned sharply. "Depth?" "Marginal," came the call from forward. We were skirting the edge of rising shelf. "Hold her," I said. "No further." The vessel stabilized within the deeper band. The swell ahead displayed broken patterns slightly to port, subtle white caps where water met obstruction beneath. The helmsman adjusted his grip unconsciously. Approach demands nerve. Land lay visible now, textured and alive in midday light. But between us and shore stretched complexity. We advanced, slowly, deliberately. and beneath anticipation lay quiet tension. We sailed on. By early afternoon, the coastline stood fully formed against the sky, its slopes now distinct in contour, its ridges layered in alternating bands of light and shadow. What had begun as a distant interruption had resolved into terrain, rising hills, darker valleys, a pale strip that could only be shore. Yet between us and that visible certainty lay water that refused simplicity. The sea ahead shifted in bands of turquoise and deep blue, channels weaving through lighter shelves, whose boundaries were not straight but irregular, curving with hidden contours beneath the surface. The swell that had carried us faithfully across the Atlantic now fractured as it encountered submerged formations. Waves bent subtly, their crests collapsing sooner in some places, running longer in others. I ordered sail eased further. Speed is enemy to precision in shallow water. The helmsman held steady as we followed what appeared to be the deeper channel, its darker tones suggesting safer passage. Soundings continued at measured intervals, each call announced without haste. 5 fathoms. Adequate. 4.5. Marginal but navigable. We edged slightly starboard again, adjusting by degrees. The vessel responded obediently, her bow turning with restrained grace. Birds circled in increasing number now, their cries layered and constant. The scent of vegetation drifted steadily across the deck. The crew's breathing seemed deeper, as though drawing something long denied. Then it happened. Not impact, not shock, but a change in tone. I felt it first through the soles of my boots, a faint alteration in the vibration of the hull, subtle but unmistakable. The vessel's forward motion did not halt, yet something beneath us had shifted from open glide to textured resistance. A moment later came the sound. Not a crack. Not a grind. A brief, roughened whisper along the keel. The helmsman's hands tightened. The captain's head turned sharply. "Depth?" he called. The lead dropped immediately. The line descended slower than before. 3 fathoms! Lower than comfort. The scrape came again, slightly more pronounced this time, a muted fibrous contact, as though wood brushed coarse stone. "Port 2 points," I said calmly. Not shouted, not sharp, measured. The helmsman complied at once, turning the wheel with deliberate strength. The vessel responded sluggishly for a heartbeat, then eased away from resistance. The vibration shifted again, returning to smoother glide. Sound? The lead descended once more. 4 fathoms. Better. We had grazed the outer lip of a reef shelf. The captain's gaze fixed forward. "Hold her steady," he said, voice level but firm. The crew moved without panic, lines adjusted, sails eased further to reduce forward drive. No man shouted, no accusation passed lips. The helmsman swallowed once, but did not falter. The water to port showed faint whitening, where swell broke prematurely, across hidden coral. The darker channel lay slightly to starboard, its path winding, but deeper. "Another point starboard," I instructed. The vessel complied, her hull gliding now through water whose colour deepened subtly. The scraping did not return. Soundings confirmed increasing depth. 3.5, then 4, then 4.5. We had crossed the reef's outer shoulder. The captain exhaled slowly. "You felt it before you heard it," he said quietly. "Yes. And you trusted it." "I trusted the change." He nodded. "Good." The crew resumed their rhythm, though with sharpened awareness. Relief did not manifest in speech, but in posture, shoulders easing slightly, breath releasing. The helmsman remained steady at the wheel. "Stay with it," I said quietly beside him. He nodded once. Land lay ahead, green and immovable. The sea between us had tested attention. We advanced again, slower, more deliberate. The Atlantic had ended. The coast had begun. Once clear of the reef's outer shoulder, the vessel entered water whose tone shifted from uncertain turbulence to layered complexity. The darker channel curved gently toward a break in the coastline, what appeared to be a natural inlet between two low ridges. The swell, no longer long and uniform, fractured into cross patterns, influenced by submerged contours, invisible to the eye, but readable in motion. I remained beside the helm, observing not only the water ahead, but the behavior of waves at angles beyond our bow. Where crests rose abruptly and folded inward upon themselves, depth diminished. Where they stretched and passed uninterrupted, channel likely continued. "Reduce sail further," I instructed. Canvas slackened, speed diminished to deliberate pace. The crew moved with sharpened discipline now. The earlier scrape had not frightened them. It had clarified the nature of our transition. Open ocean forgives gradual error. Coastal water does not. Soundings continued at shortened intervals. 4 fathoms. 3.75. 4 again. The numbers oscillated as we followed the darker band. The helmsman corrected gently with each instruction, his movements now measured, stripped of earlier anticipation. I sensed in him a renewed humility. Not fear, but awareness. The captain surveyed the coastline carefully. The slopes ahead rose in textured green, broken by occasional exposed stone. Near the base of the inlet, I could now distinguish what appeared to be a pale beach, beyond which dense vegetation climbed in irregular layers. The water within the inlet shimmered lighter than the channel outside. "Inside looks calmer," the captain observed. "Inside may conceal further shoal," I replied. He smiled faintly. "You never surrender caution." "Caution is a rival," I said. By late afternoon, the angle of light sharpened the underwater topography further. Shadows revealed ridges beneath the surface. The channel narrowed perceptibly as it approached the inlet's mouth. then appeared to deepen slightly beyond. Birds moved in constant arcs overhead, some diving briefly toward the water before lifting again. Their confidence in this place contrasted with our deliberate hesitation. A current began to press gently from starboard, subtle but persistent. I adjusted our heading by a degree to compensate, ensuring we did not drift toward lighter bands. 3 fathoms. 3.5. The lead sang its numbers in steady rhythm. We entered the mouth of the inlet with sails nearly slack, relying more upon steerage than momentum. The swell diminished dramatically once within its partial shelter. Water smoothed, though small cross ripples hinted at submerged rock. The crew relaxed incrementally as motion steadied. Yet I did not. Sheltered water can deceive. The channel inside curved again, forming a natural basin bordered by sloping shore. Depth increased modestly, then shallowed again near the inner edge. The captain looked toward me. "Anchor here?" he asked. The sun had begun its slow descent toward the western ridge, casting long shadows across the basin. Light glittered across shallower areas, obscuring detail. "Not yet," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Light is against us. Depth unclear in fading glare. Better to hold just outside and enter fully at morning." He considered, then nodded. "Prudence, once proven, is seldom challenged." We eased the vessel slightly back toward deeper channel water, allowing her to ride gentle current at reduced speed while remaining clear of inner shoal. The crew's posture reflected restrained anticipation. Land lay within clear sight. The scent of vegetation drifted steadily. The basin ahead promised calm anchorage. Yet night complicates first entry. As sunset deepened, we positioned ourselves just beyond the inlet mouth, maintaining safe depth while preparing for controlled hold. Sails were trimmed minimally. The vessel faced into gentle current. The coastline darkened gradually, its greens dissolving into layered shadow. Above it, the sky bloomed in amber, then crimson, then deepening violet. Birds settled inland in scattered flight. The sea within the inlet stilled to glass. Outside, our vessel rose gently in modest swell. The captain stood beside me as darkness gathered. "We could go in," he said softly. "Yes," I replied. "But we will not." "No." He exhaled, satisfied. "Very well." Night near land carries a different character than night in open sea. Sounds travel differently. The scent intensifies. The darkness feels less infinite, more contained. We set anchor lightly in deeper outer channel water, sufficient to hold position without drifting toward shoal. The chain descended with muted authority. The hull steadied. The crew moved quietly, their energy subdued by completion, yet restrained by discipline. Land lay close, but arrival would wait for morning. We would enter properly. The night we spent offshore was unlike any night of the crossing. In open Atlantic darkness, the horizon disappears entirely. Sea and sky merge without boundary. and the mind adjusts to infinity. But here, with land resting just beyond reach, the darkness possessed contour. Even without moonlight, I could sense the massive coastline to starboard, not visible in detail, yet present as a deeper absence against the sky. The anchor chain held us steady in deeper outer water, its tension humming faintly through the hull. The swell beyond the inlet mouth remained gentle, lifting and lowering the vessel with patient rhythm. Within the basin ahead, I could hear quieter water lapping against hidden shore. The crew settled more easily than expected. The sight of land had eased something in them, even though we had not yet set foot upon it. Conversations were muted. Laughter surfaced briefly and faded. One man hummed a hymn under his breath before sleep claimed him. I remained on deck. The captain joined me for a time, his posture less rigid than during the crossing. "We are here," he said quietly. "We are near," I replied. He accepted the distinction. The air carried full scent now. Vegetation warmed by day, earth breathing into night, faint sweetness unfamiliar after months of salt alone. It drifted across the water in subtle waves, strengthening and fading with shifting breeze. I closed my eyes briefly and inhaled deeply. 74 days at sea compress a man's senses. Arrival expands them again. The stars overhead shone brightly, unimpeded by cloud. Yet their arrangement felt altered, not by latitude alone, but by context. They no longer governed emptiness. They hovered above destination. I took one final reading, more from habit than necessity, confirming our position relative to shoreline shadow. The numbers aligned with expectation. The inlet lay precisely where earlier estimation had placed it. Precision brings quiet satisfaction. Below deck, the crew slept with steadier breath. The helmsman who had grazed the reef earlier rested near the bulkhead, his expression no longer tense. Error, corrected calmly, becomes instruction rather than stain. I returned briefly to my cabin and unfolded the letter to Isabel once more. "My dearest, we have sighted land. It rose first as shadow, then form. We approached cautiously and now lie just beyond its shelter, waiting for morning light to guide our proper entry. The scent of earth reaches us even here. It is a strange comfort after so long, with only salt upon the air." I paused, considering how to describe the moment without excess. There was no triumph, only relief. I wrote that the sea had taught patience, that arrival requires as much discipline as departure, that faith steadies the hand not only in storm but in quiet water where decision matters most. I sealed the page once more. Back on deck, the captain had withdrawn. Only 2 men stood watch. The coastline remained dark, its ridges indistinct yet undeniable. Sometime past midnight, the breeze shifted slightly offshore, carrying cooler air from inland heights. The scent deepened briefly, then softened again. I leaned against the rail and allowed memory to pass through me. Earlier voyages along Mediterranean coastlines. Harbours entered too hastily in fading light. The embarrassment of correcting anchor position at dawn, when depth proved misjudged. Experience is often shaped by small miscalculations more than grand events. We would not misjudge this one. The swell outside the inlet pulsed steadily through the night, never threatening, merely present. The hull answered with muted creaks that had become familiar companions. Near dawn, the eastern sky began to pale once more. I did not sleep. Arrival deserves witness. The eastern horizon softened from indigo to silver without spectacle. Dawn near land does not erupt as it does upon open ocean. It unfolds gradually, revealing contour rather than emptiness. The coastline that had rested as shadow through the night began to separate itself into ridges and folds as light advanced across the water. The anchor chain trembled faintly as the tide shifted. The vessel adjusted her orientation by degrees, turning gently into the incoming current that pressed from beyond the inlet. I studied the surface patterns carefully. Ripples within the mouth of the basin moved differently now than they had at sunset. What had appeared smooth from distance now revealed intricate cross-currents influenced by tide and submerged stone. "Raise anchor," I said quietly. The crew moved with disciplined efficiency. No urgency, no noise beyond necessary labor. The chain rose link by link, wet and dark before clearing the water. The vessel drifted momentarily, then responded as the helmsman engaged steerage once more. The sun crested the eastern ridge slowly, its light sliding across the slopes of green ahead and illuminating the basin interior. Details emerged that night had concealed. A narrow sandbar curved along the northern edge of the inlet. To the south, darker patches beneath the surface marked coral shelves, extending further inward than expected. I recalculated our intended path. "Hold to starboard channel," I instructed. The darker band of water traced a sinuous line through lighter turquoise fields. It narrowed briefly near the inlet mouth, then broadened again inside. The key would be patience. Soundings resumed at shortened intervals. 4 fathoms. 3.5. Adequate. The swell beyond the inlet diminished as we crossed fully into its shelter. Motion smoothed. The hull glided more evenly. Birds crossed overhead in steady arcs, some settling upon the water near shore before lifting again. The scent intensified under morning warmth. Earth, leaf, faint blossom. The crew breathed it as if rediscovering air itself. The helmsman moved with greater restraint now, each correction slight, deliberate. I stood beside him, not from distrust, but from shared focus. "There," I said softly, indicating a lighter band ahead, where water shallowed abruptly, near a coral outcrop. He adjusted a degree to port. The vessel obeyed. 3 fathoms. We passed safely. Inside the basin, depth increased modestly toward its center. The water darkened again, suggesting a pocket deep enough for anchorage. The surface here lay calmer still, only small ripples betraying subtle tidal movement. The captain surveyed the space. "This will hold," he said. "Yes." We circled once at minimal speed to confirm consistency of depth. 4 fathoms, 4.25. Stable. The slopes surrounding the basin rose in layered vegetation, interrupted occasionally by exposed rock. No visible habitation revealed itself. Smoke did not rise. No canoe disturbed the water's surface. The place appeared untouched, though I knew better than to assume absence of watchers. "Prepare to anchor," I said. The crew responded with quiet readiness. The anchor, cleared and positioned, hung poised above the surface as we aligned the vessel into gentle current. "Let go." The anchor dropped cleanly, chain following in measured descent. A moment later the line drew taut. The hull pivoted slowly, settling into stable orientation, facing the inlet mouth. I watched carefully for drift. None came. The basin held us. Silence followed. Not emptiness, but completion. The crew stood momentarily without instruction, absorbing the stillness of anchored water after 74 days of motion. One man laughed softly under his breath, then stopped as though uncertain whether sound was appropriate. The captain approached me. "Well guided," he said. "The sea permitted it," I replied. He smiled faintly. "You will never take full credit." "There is none to take." The sun rose higher, warming the deck and igniting the greens along the shore. Light reflected in shimmering patterns across the basin's surface. Small fish darted near the hull, visible in clarity, impossible in open ocean. The helmsman, who had grazed the reef earlier, approached quietly. "I held too eager yesterday," he said. "You corrected," I replied. He nodded once, accepting the lesson. The crew began routine tasks, securing lines, inspecting hull where possible, organizing stores for eventual landing party. Yet movement remained measured, as though no one wished to disturb the basin's calm prematurely. I leaned against the rail and allowed myself a final survey of the inlet. Its protective arms of green, its quiet interior water, its absence of visible human mark. After 74 days, we had crossed from abstraction into place. The Atlantic lay behind us, vast and patient. Before us lay terrain not yet known. I closed the logbook with steady hand. Arrival is not noise. It is alignment. And for the first time since leaving Spain, the vessel did not move. The basin held us through the morning without disturbance. As the sun climbed fully above the eastern ridge, light poured across the sheltered water in expanding sheets of gold. The Atlantic swell that had shaped our bodies for weeks could no longer be felt here. Instead, the vessel rested in gentle oscillation, responding only to faint tide and the lightest inland breeze. For the first time since leaving Spain, silence felt complete. Not absence of sound, but absence of vastness. Bird calls echoed from the slopes beyond the sandbar, distinct now, layered and varied. Insects hummed faintly near shore. The scent of vegetation deepened as warmth increased, carrying notes of leaf, bark, and something floral that drifted across the basin in subtle waves. The crew moved about their duties more slowly than during the crossing, not from fatigue but from adjustment. Bodies accustomed to perpetual motion require time to understand stillness. Several men stood at the rail longer than necessary, gazing toward the shore as though verifying its persistence. The captain ordered a small boat prepared for sounding along the inner curve of the basin. Not landing, merely measurement. Precision remains discipline even after arrival. I joined the boat with 2 sailors and the helmsman, whose expression carried quiet determination. The oars entered the water softly, their rhythm different from the thrust of open sea labor. The basin responded with minimal resistance. From water level, the slopes appeared taller than they had from deck. The sandbar revealed faint patterns of ripple formed by tide. Beneath the clear surface, coral formations rose in intricate structures, their edges pale against deeper sand channels. We took soundings at measured intervals. 3 fathoms, 2.5 near shore. The depths confirmed our earlier estimate. The anchorage was secure within its center, though approach must remain cautious. Returning to the vessel, I noted the clarity of water around the hull. Small fish moved in darting patterns beneath us. Sea grasses waved gently in shallower margins of the basin. The crew lowered casks carefully to rinse salt from their surfaces. Laughter returned in modest measure. One man splashed water across his face repeatedly, smiling without restraint. The captain observed from the quarter-deck. "Controlled joy," he said quietly. "Yes. Unrestrained exuberance leads to carelessness. We would not allow it." By midday, heat intensified. The basin air grew thick yet not oppressive. Shade along the starboard side offered relief. Some of the crew rested briefly while others inspected rigging for wear accumulated during the crossing. I descended once more to my cabin and unfolded the letter to Isabel. We are anchored in a basin sheltered by green slopes and pale sand. The crossing has ended without loss. There was a moment of caution near reef, but discipline prevailed. I have thought often of the mass we would have attended together. Here, without church or bell, I offered quiet prayer at dawn for safe arrival. I paused, considering whether to describe the basin's beauty in detail. I chose restraint. Beauty is better witnessed than described. Back on deck, the captain joined me at the rail. "We will land tomorrow," he said. "Yes. Today we observe." "Observation is first claim," I replied. He smiled faintly at the phrase. The afternoon passed in measured tasks. Sails were inspected for minor tears. The hull was examined where visible. Provisions tallied. Water stores evaluated against potential inland source. Toward evening, shadows lengthened across the basin. The water's surface mirrored the slopes in softened reflection. The sound of insects increased. A faint rustle in vegetation hinted at unseen life beyond sight. The crew gathered for simple meal on deck, seated in small groups, conversation low but steady. No shouting, no rough jesting. The presence of land moderated tone instinctively. The helmsman approached once more, his earlier tension replaced with calm resolve. "You felt the reef before I saw it," he said. "The sea speaks differently near shore," I replied. "I will listen sooner next time." "You already have." He nodded, satisfied. As dusk descended, the sky above the basin glowed in layered color, amber fading to rose, then violet. The Atlantic beyond the inlet darkened first, then the slopes followed, their green dissolving into silhouette. The vessel remained steady upon her anchor, chain firm, hull unmoving, save for gentle tide. I remained at the rail as stars emerged overhead. The same constellations that had guided us across open ocean now hovered above anchored water. Their positions unchanged, yet their meaning altered. In crossing, they represent direction. At anchor, they represent continuity. I whispered a brief prayer of gratitude, not for conquest, not for discovery, but for safe passage and measured hand. 74 days from Spain. The Atlantic lay complete behind us. Tomorrow, we would step upon new ground. Tonight we rested between sea and shore, and for the first time since departure, the vessel did not carry us forward. She held. The first full light of morning at anchor unfolded without the vast theatrical sweep of ocean dawn. It rose instead with measured clarity, revealing basin, shore, and vessel, as if lifting a veil from forms already known. A thin line of silver traced the eastern ridge before the sun itself appeared. The water within the basin held that light gently, reflecting it in softened patterns that rippled toward our hull. Beyond the inlet mouth, the Atlantic retained deeper tone, its open swell moving in patient repetition. For the first time in 74 days, I did not calculate departure at dawn. I observed. The crew stirred gradually, their movements slower than during crossing mornings. There was no immediate demand for sail trim or heading correction. Instead, men emerged from below deck and paused at the rail, gazing toward the sandbar and the slopes rising beyond it. No one spoke loudly. Land commands quiet. The scent of vegetation arrived more clearly in the cool of morning. It carried damp earth, leaf, faint sweetness from unseen bloom. Insects traced small arcs near the water's edge. A bird with long wings skimmed the surface of the basin before lifting toward the trees. The captain joined me without formal greeting. "We are well placed," he said. "Yes." "No drift?" "None." He nodded once and rested both hands upon the rail. The basin revealed more detail as light strengthened. The pale sand along the northern curve showed faint ripple marks left by night tide. Darker coral patches beneath clear water outlined the shallower margins we had avoided at entry. The deeper pocket where we anchored remained steady in colour. Precision at dusk had become confirmation at dawn. The helmsman approached quietly, standing a respectful distance from us. "I would go ashore carefully," he said. "Yes," I replied, "not in haste." "Never in haste." He nodded and withdrew. I walked the deck slowly, tracing the vessel's perimeter as I had done countless times at sea. The difference lay not in wood beneath hand, but in what surrounded it. No longer infinite horizon, but contained space. The basin held us gently, as though acknowledging our arrival without ceremony. The Atlantic beyond the inlet continued its measured pulse. Though sheltered here, we were not separated from it. Its rhythm remained audible through distant swell. The crossing could not be erased by anchorage. It had shaped us. I retrieved the sextant from its case, one final time, not to calculate position, but to observe the sun's angle over inland ridge. Habit remains long, after necessity fades. The instrument felt balanced in hand, its brass warmed by growing light. Numbers no longer determined survival. They marked completion. Below deck, preparations began for cautious landing party. Rope coiled, small boat inspected, water cask selected for refill attempt should inland source prove fresh. Yet no command to lower boat was given. Patience. Arrival must not dissolve discipline. The captain leaned toward me slightly. "You will step ashore first." "I will step when ordered," I replied. He smiled faintly. "You prefer deference, even at arrival. Navigation ends at shoreline." He considered that and nodded. The crew assembled near midship, not crowding but present. Their faces carried anticipation, tempered by fatigue of long crossing. They had endured heat, monotony, uncertainty, and the vast indifference of open sea. Now they stood within sight of trees and sand. One of the younger sailors removed his cap briefly and crossed himself again. This time not quietly, but openly. I offered silent gratitude of my own, not for conquest, not for discovery, for safe passage. The sun rose fully above the ridge, bathing basin and vessel alike in steady gold. The slopes brightened to layered green. Shadows shortened. The water beneath us revealed faint grasses, waving near shallower edges. Still we waited. There is a final moment between sea and land that deserves preservation. A breath suspended between movement and step. I returned to the logbook and wrote a final entry for the crossing. Anchored in sheltered basin west of Spain. Depth 4 fathoms, reef contact minimal, corrected without damage. Crew intact, vessel sound, landfall confirmed at dawn, crossing complete. The words lay simple upon the page. 74 days reduced to lines. I closed the book and rested my hand upon it for a long moment. The Atlantic remained beyond the inlet mouth, vast and unconcerned with our arrival. It would carry other vessels long after we departed this basin. Its swell would rise and fall without memory of our passage. Yet for us the crossing had been singular. We had left river and familiar shore under closed sky. We had endured overcast nights without star. We had trusted dead reckoning when sight failed. We had felt current shift, scent change, bird increase. We had grazed reef lightly and corrected course. We had entered basin under fading light and chosen patience over haste. Now we stood at the threshold of new terrain. The vessel held steady beneath morning sun. The crew breathed air no longer shaped by endless salt alone. And I, having watched horizon for 74 days, allowed my gaze to rest upon fixed land without calculation. The Atlantic crossing was finished. The journey beyond it had yet to begin. The captain gave the order only after the sun had climbed high enough to flatten the glare upon the basin's surface. "Lower the boat," he said, voice calm, as if this were a routine harbour and not the end of 74 days at sea. The crew moved with practiced coordination. The small boat descended by tackle in steady measure, timber creaking softly as it met water. Oars were set in place, a cask was secured for refill, and a coil of rope laid carefully in the bow. No man leapt in haste. Discipline remained. I took my place amidships in the boat, the helmsman opposite me, 2 sailors at the oars. The captain remained aboard, watching without comment. His authority did not require proximity. The oars dipped into the basin. The first strokes felt strange, not in exertion but in rhythm. After weeks of surrendering to sail and swell, our bodies now imposed movement directly upon water. The boat responded immediately, gliding forward with quiet obedience. From this lower vantage, the vessel behind us seemed taller, more substantial, her hull rising from the basin like a resting animal. The anchor chain drew a clean line into clear water. Above, canvas hung slack in stillness. Ahead, the sandbar broadened into pale shore. Bird calls intensified as we approached. A breeze carried stronger scent from inland trees, damp earth warmed by morning sun. Insects traced small spirals above the water's edge. The helmsman kept his eyes forward, jaw set, intent upon doing this correctly. "Steady," I said softly. He nodded. Near the shallows, water changed colour abruptly, revealing coral heads beneath the surface. We angled slightly to avoid them, guiding the boat toward a small gap in the sandbar where the depth held longer. The oars slowed. The keel brushed sand lightly. Not a scrape of reef. Not a warning. A gentle contact that carried no danger. The boat settled. No one spoke for a moment. The silence was not hesitation. It was recognition. 74 days of moving water behind us. Fixed ground before us. I stepped out first, boots sinking slightly into cool sand. The shore held firm. It did not rise and fall beneath the feet. It did not shift with breath of wind. It simply was. Behind me the sailors followed, careful and quiet. One knelt briefly to touch the sand, then stood again, without drama. I looked back once toward the basin. The vessel rested at anchor, steady in morning light. The Atlantic lay beyond the inlet mouth, unseen now from this low shore, yet present in memory and muscle. We had crossed, we had arrived, and the journey that would carry us onward from this basin had begun, not with fanfare, but with the steady sound of oars returning to water.